Hey guys, this week I have not one but two art supply reviews for you by the company PARKOO. And today we're going to be talking about their dual tip art markers that I was sent. So thank you again PARKOO for sending me these art supplies to test out and review. These are 48 set alcohol-based markers. So these would be sort of a Copic dupe or alternative, and it's definitely in the lower price range if this is something that you're interested in trying out. These markers have a fine tip and a broad tip. The fine tip is sort of like a bullet nib, and the broad is like a chisel like you would normally find on quite a lot of markers. And the fine tip does have this sort of gray strip on it, so you know that that is that end on a quick glance, as well as having the little graphics on there. And these are sort of an oblong shape, not quite round, so they won't, or at least shouldn't, roll off your table. Here is the bullet tip or the fine tip that does have that sort of gray line mark on it, which is nice for me because I typically don't use the chisel tip. As you can see, it's a bit difficult to get the caps on and off, which in reality I would prefer them be harder to take off than easier, because that means that the markers are a lot more protected, because if they are snapping on, that means that the ink won't be drying out if the cap is loose or something like that. Each of them does have this sort of color chip on each end with a number code and a name. I will say that the colors only sort of match, and the names of the colors don't necessarily match what I would have named them. For instance, pale blue is definitely more of a lavender, and lavender is definitely more of a dark purple in my opinion. Here are all of the colors labeled out for you with a little bit of sort of what the colors look like. It's always good for you to swatch out your colors whenever you get a new art supply, because no matter what, the plastic end is just not going to be the best way for you to identify what colors you have. I actually really liked this sort of sturdy cardboard box that they came in. Here I am showing you that some of the titles that are printed on there are a bit rubbed off. Really is important to me with marker sets like this is that I have a wide range of colors to choose from, and as I begin swatching them here for you, you can see just how wide a range and variety you have with this set. And I would say that I am still relatively new to using alcohol markers in my art, and that is why I really am on the hunt for affordable marker sets. So here are all of my swatches. I tried to do a nice big swatch on the top to show how smooth you can get the colors if you work quickly enough, and then also I wanted to show you sort of the thick line and then as thin a line as you can possibly get with the chisel side. And right after I made my little swatch sheet, I decided to kind of take a sec and make some notes about what my first impressions were of these markers. And so I got my handy dandy PARKOO erasable pens. I'll have a link above and below if you're interested in checking that video out. And I decided to make a list. So here I am kind of going through my first impressions. I always like to pick the strong suit of a product that I am testing out and really use it to the best of its ability. And since there are so many amazing oranges in this pack, I decided to draw a tiger. So as I am working on this piece, I thought I would start with my things to consider list. So the first thing is there is no brush tip. I know a lot of artists tend to enjoy the brush tip on markers such as Copics, and I am definitely one of those people as well. I like how you can get lots of details, but also a pretty broad stroke. However, this is not a deal breaker. Bullet nibs are the main nib I use on a lot of my cheaper markers. I make do, and I can actually get quite a bit of detail with bullet nib markers, especially if you're just getting started. Don't let that be a deal breaker for you, especially since the more inexpensive markers that are definitely the ones you want to start with will not have the brush nib. I will, however, mention that compared to some of my other bullet nib markers, I noticed that the bullet nib on these ones are a little bit more blunt. So if you do know that you like doing a ton of detail, that is a little bit more difficult because the tip is a little bit more blunt. Another thing to consider is that while these are among the cheapest alcohol markers you can purchase, there do seem to be some other very similar markers that are around the same price, if not a few dollars cheaper here or there. That you can find on Amazon. One brand in particular I know that is probably the most direct competition with these PARKOO markers would be the Ohuhu markers, because they come in a similar pack. They come in similar colors, which is actually sort of interesting. I did check out the Amazon product page for the Ohuhu markers, and I was a little confused because a lot of the colors, both the naming and the numbers, seem to be exactly the same to these PARKOO markers that I have, but they ended up having some other colors that were not included in this set. And so it does make me wonder if maybe if you did get the Ohuhu markers and these PARKOO ones, you would possibly get a more full set, full color range, but you would be getting quite a lot of duplicates. Something I did mention before, the colors on the ends of the caps are a little bit off at times, but this really isn't anything new. Even Copic can have a lot of issues with that sort of thing. The numbers don't seem to correlate with anything in particular for the way the colors are labeled or any sort of color chart. There isn't anything that sort of corresponds to, at least for the consumer, it seems. But again, this isn't really something that I care an awful lot about, because I do end up swatching everything out and I have so many different brands of markers that it really doesn't matter to me what the colors correlate to, the numbers correlate to. That does bring me to a couple other points: that these are not sold individually and they do not have refills, which again, very common with cheaper alternatives like this. If you're looking for something that is refillable, just go with Copics or possibly some other brands. Another thing I had a little bit of an issue with, just because of the type of art that I do, is that there are not really any pastel colors. All of the colors are quite saturated, and again, this is something for someone who makes art similar to mine might want to consider, but this might be perfect for you if you really love saturated colors. Now on to my favorite things about these markers. If you haven't noticed already, I definitely love how affordable these are. Right now on Amazon, I'll have the link down below. These retail for about $25 USD for 48 colors. That ends up being roughly 52 cents a marker, which compared to obviously the Copic markers, anywhere from about $5 to $8 a marker, that is definitely a lot cheaper. It's in a different camp than Copics, but if you are beginning and you want to start somewhere, these are definitely ones that you'll want to start with. Like I mentioned, the colors are very vibrant. Aside from not having pastels, you do have a wide range of greens and teals, oranges, and you have warm and cool grays, which I really do enjoy. I really enjoy that they don't roll off the table. Similar to Copics, they are sort of an oblong shape, at least the Copic sketch. They shouldn't roll off your desk, which is actually a really fantastic thing when you just have markers everywhere and you're working on a piece and things get a little crazy. You don't want to lose the markers that you're working with. They are quite blendable, which this is something that you're gonna have with most alcohol markers, and these were no different, so that was really fantastic. One last favorite thing that I did want to mention that I really appreciate with this set is that there are a really wide range of neutral colors, actually a lighter sort of peach color, as well as more of a neutral peach color, as well as quite a lot of warm and cool browns. And so I would imagine that this would be a really fantastic set if you are the type of artist that draws lots of different people of all sorts of different skin tones that aren't just Caucasian. So that is something that I really was surprised and happy about, even though that isn't something that I myself would use those colors for as much. I do know a lot of marker artists out there love drawing girls or people and can be really limited by what is marketed as a sort of skin tone set, which really does limit the variation in the colors you can get and different people that you can draw. As I am finishing up here with this tiger art piece, I did want to mention one extra thing that didn't make it into my original cut. I did notice a couple issues with the plastic and the actual construction of the pens as I was swatching these out a little later to get them more incorporated into my collection. And I noticed that one of the grays, one of the caps is a little bent, and it makes me a little concerned that this marker might dry out either completely or at least on the bullet nib, and it's a little concerning. I might be able to try to bend it to see if I can get a better hold, but it seems a little bent out of shape. And then another marker I noticed when I was capping and uncapping it, as you saw in the beginning, I did have a little bit of trouble getting some of the caps off, which in theory is fantastic to make sure that the pens stay nice and sealed when they are closed, so they'll last a lot longer. Obviously that can be frustrating when you're trying to go between colors back and forth and you're just sort of yanking on the caps to get them off. And I did notice that one of my colors did actually come apart because I sort of pulled a little too hard, and luckily I was able to put everything back together and it was fine, and I was able to snap it back together. And I would just caution, if you do end up getting this set, that be careful about maybe twisting the caps a little bit instead of just yanking them off, because some of them might have a little bit of trouble with the whole barrel staying connected, and that is just a little cautionary note that I wanted to add here at the end. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this art piece that I created for you with these markers and enjoyed my review of them. Let me know down below, have you tried these markers or something similar, and do you have any tips for beginning with marker art that you have learned along your art journey? Share them down below so that others can pick up on those tips and we can share our resources together. As I mentioned before, I do have the Amazon links down in the description for these markers if you are interested in checking those out. I want to thank PARKOO again for being able to try these products and for having them send them to me to give my honest review of them. Later in the week, I will be testing out some other art markers from them that are water-based, so stay tuned for Friday's video. Alright guys, that's it from me. As always, I hope you have a creatively fulfilled day, and I will see you next time. Bye guys!